The Awakening Bond. The alarm klaxons of Nexus Station pierced through the humid recycled air like digital screams, their red warning lights painting the crowded marketplace in hellish hues. Captain Jackson Reed ducked behind a vendor's stall as plasma bolts sizzled past his head, the acrid smell of burned electronics filling his nostrils. "Just my luck," he muttered, checking the power cell on his sidearm. "Stop for supplies and walk into a bloody pirate raid." The Crimson Reapers had hit Nexus Station hard and fast, their boarding parties sweeping through the civilian sectors with ruthless efficiency. Jackson had been haggling over fusion coils when the shooting started, and now he found himself trapped 3 levels away from his ship, the Stellar Wanderer. A plasma rifle crackled nearby, followed by the wet sound of someone hitting the deck. Jackson peered around the corner of the stall and saw a woman standing over 2 dead Reapers, smoke rising from the barrel of an elegant energy weapon he'd never seen before. She was tall and lithe, with skin that seemed to shimmer with an inner light and hair so deep blue it was almost black. But it was her eyes that caught his attention. They seemed to shift between 3 different colors as he watched, cycling from amber to silver to deep violet. "You planning to hide there all day, freight jockey?" she called out, her voice carrying an accent he couldn't place. "Or are you going to help me clear a path to the docking bays?" Jackson emerged from cover, weapon raised. "Name's Jackson Reed, and I'm nobody's freight jockey. I prefer independent contractor." She smiled, and for a moment her entire face seemed to flicker, as if 3 different expressions were fighting for control. "I'm Leanna, and right now we need each other if we want to get off this station alive." As if summoned by her words, a squad of Reapers rounded the corner, their leader barking orders in the harsh dialect of the Outer Rim pirates. Jackson and Leanna moved as one, their weapons speaking in unison. The attackers dropped before they could return fire, their armor no match for the combined assault. "Nice shooting," Jackson said, impressed despite himself. "You're not terrible either," Leanna replied, though her voice sounded different now, deeper, more controlled. "We should move. There will be more." They fought their way through 3 levels of chaos, covering each other with an intuitive coordination that surprised Jackson. It was as if they'd been partners for years, anticipating each other's movements, with uncanny precision. Every time he thought they were cornered, Leanna would suggest a route or tactic that saved their lives. "How do you know this station so well?" he asked as they paused in an abandoned shop to catch their breath. Leanna's eyes flickered through their color cycle again. "I've been here before, many times in different circumstances." Before Jackson could ask what she meant, another wave of pirates forced them back into action. They reached the docking bay just as the station's main reactor began showing signs of overload, the Reaper's parting gift to ensure no witnesses survived. "My ship's in Bay 94, Jackson shouted over the growing rumble of failing systems. "Where's yours?" Leanna's expression turned sad, and for a moment her face seemed to blur between features. "Destroyed in the first wave. I was hoping to negotiate passage." Jackson didn't hesitate. "Come on then. The Wanderers got room for 2. They reached his ship as the station's lights began failing in sequence. The Stellar Wanderer was a modified Corellian freighter, not much to look at, but fast when it mattered. As they strapped in for emergency launch, Jackson caught Leanna staring at him with an intensity that made his skin tingle. "What?" he asked, running through the launch sequence. "You saved my life back there," she said softly, her voice now carrying a musical quality he hadn't noticed before. "On my world, that creates a bond, just returning the favor. You saved mine first." The station exploded behind them as they cleared the docking bay, debris scattered across space like metallic confetti. Jackson set course for the nearest inhabited system, but Leanna placed her hand over his on the controls. "Wait," she said, her eyes now glowing with an inner light. "There's something you need to know about my people, about what just happened between us." Jackson felt a strange warmth spreading through his body where she touched him, starting at his hand and flowing up his arm like liquid fire. "What are you talking about?" "The bond I mentioned. It's not metaphorical. When 2 souls save each other's lives while touching, our essences become linked." Her face shimmered again, more noticeably this time. I should have warned you, but there wasn't time, and now... Now what? Jackson asked, though part of him already knew the answer. The warmth had reached his chest, and he could feel something fundamental changing inside him. Now we're married, said a different voice entirely, still coming from Liana's mouth, but deeper, more martial. According to the ancient laws of the triad anyway. Jackson blinked, staring at the woman whose hand still rested on his. Her features had shifted subtly, becoming more angular, and her eyes were now solid silver. I'm sorry, but who are you exactly? I'm Valora, the woman said, then her face flickered again. Well, I'm part of Liana, the warrior aspect, you might say. Before Jackson could respond, her features shifted once more, becoming softer, more ethereal. Her eyes were now the deep violet he'd first seen, and when she spoke, her voice carried harmonics that seemed to resonate in his bones. And I am Zephyra, the mystic soul, she said with a gentle smile. Please forgive the confusion. We don't often encounter beings capable of forming the Trinity bond. Jackson stared at her. Them, his mind reeling. Let me get this straight. You're 3 different people in one body? Not people exactly, said the original voice, Liana's. We're 3 aspects of a single triad consciousness. Our species evolved with multiple soul fragments as a survival mechanism. Usually only one aspect dominates at a time. But the bond you've formed with us has awakened all 3 simultaneously. The warmth in Jackson's chest had spread throughout his entire body now, and he could feel something like whispers at the edge of his consciousness. Not thoughts exactly, but emotional impressions that weren't his own. This is insane, he muttered, running a hand through his hair. I'm having some kind of breakdown. Space madness, that's gotta be it. Liana's face cycled rapidly between the 3 aspects, each one speaking in turn. You're not insane, said Liana. The bond is real, added Valora. And irreversible, finished Zephyra with apologetic sympathy. Jackson stood up abruptly, pacing the small confines of the cockpit. Okay, let's say I believe this. Let's say you really are 3 soul in one body, and we're somehow mystically married now because we touched while shooting pirates. What happens next? The 3 aspects seemed to confer among themselves, their shared face flickering between expressions before settling on Liana's gentler features. That depends on you, she said quietly. The bond can remain dormant. You'll feel our presence, occasionally, but your life continues mostly as before, or, Jackson prompted. Or you can come with us to Trionis, our homeworld, and undergo the convergence ritual. It would make the bond permanent and complete, joining your consciousness with ours in a way that's never been attempted with an off-worlder. Jackson stared out at the stars, his mind racing. 24 hours ago, his biggest concern had been whether to take a cargo run to the Vega system or head back to Earth for shore leave. Now he was apparently married to 3 alien souls who wanted to merge his consciousness with theirs. What happens if I say no? He asked. Liana's expression turned sad. We part ways. The bond will fade over time, though you'll always carry a piece of us with you. We return to Trionis alone, and you continue your life among the stars. And if I say yes, then you become something new, said Valora, her warrior's aspect dominating for a moment. Something that's never existed before, a human triad hybrid consciousness. The first of your kind, added Zephyra, her mystic knowledge, bleeding through, a bridge between our species. Jackson looked at them, her, trying to process the magnitude of what was being offered. A part of him wanted to run, to drop Liana off at the nearest station and pretend this had all been a strange dream. But another part, a deeper part that seemed to resonate with the alien warmth in his chest, was curious. Tell me about Trionis, he said finally. Liana smiled, all 3 aspects seeming to agree for once. It's a world of living crystal and singing storms, where the very air carries the thoughts of our ancestors. The cities are grown rather than built, and the boundaries between mind and matter are fluid. Sounds like my kind of place, Jackson said with a grin that surprised him. "I've always been partial to the impossible." "Then you'll come with us?" Valora's warrior spirit couldn't quite hide her hope. Jackson looked at the navigation console, then at the woman who was 3 women, then at the vast expanse of space beyond the viewport. His old life had been comfortable, predictable, safe. This new path led into complete unknown territory. "Cork," he called to his ship's AI, "plot a course for Trionis. Looks like I'm about to become something I never imagined." As the stellar Wanderer changed course toward the unexplored regions where the Triad homeworld waited, Jackson felt the bond between them pulse with something that might have been joy, or anticipation, or perhaps something entirely beyond human emotion. Whatever lay ahead, there was no turning back now. The convergence crisis Trionis hung before them like a jewel carved from living light, its crystalline surface refracting the system's twin suns into cascading rainbows that painted space itself in impossible colors. Jackson pressed his face to the viewport of the stellar wanderer, trying to comprehend what he was seeing. "The entire planet is alive," he breathed, watching massive crystal formations pulse with bioluminescent rhythms across the surface. "Not just alive," said Zephyra, her mystical aspect currently dominant in Lyanna's shared form, conscious. "Trionis thinks, dreams, remembers. Every crystal spire is a neuron in a planetary mind that's existed for millennia." As they descended through the atmosphere, Jackson felt the bond between them strengthen. The whispers at the edge of his consciousness grew clearer, and he began to distinguish between the 3 distinct voices that made up his alien wife. "Something's wrong." Valora's warrior instincts cut through the wonder, her voice sharp with concern. "The planetary defenses should have challenged us by now." She was right. The approach to Trionis was eerily quiet, none of the customary hails or escort protocols that any advanced civilization would employ. As they broke through the cloud layer, the reason became clear. The great crystal cities that should have been gleaming with life were dark, their surfaces cracked and bleeding streams of luminous fluid. Entire sections of the planet looked diseased. The living crystal turned black and brittle. "By the 3 moons," Lyanna whispered, her primary personality overwhelmed by grief. "What's happened to our world?" They landed in what had once been the capital city of resonance, its towering spires now twisted into agonized shapes. The Wanderer's sensors detected breathable atmosphere, but registered troubling energy readings, chaotic, discordant patterns that made Jackson's teeth ache. "Cork, full environmental scans," Jackson ordered, though part of him already knew they'd find nothing good. "Sir, I'm detecting massive psychic disturbances across the planetary surface," his AI reported with unusual uncertainty in its voice. "The resonance patterns are wrong. It's as if the planet is experiencing some form of psychological breakdown." Lyanna's form shimmered more violently than ever, the 3 aspects fighting for control as they prepared to disembark. "We have to find the Convergence Council," she said, though her voice kept shifting between the 3 personalities. "They'll know what's happening." The moment they stepped outside the ship, Jackson felt it, a crushing weight of despair and madness pressing against his mind. The bond he shared with Lyanna amplified the sensation, and through their connection, he experienced the planet's pain as his own. "It's dying," Zephyra said, tears streaming down their shared face. "Trionis is dying, and taking our people with it." They made their way through the crystalline streets, passing scenes of devastation that defied explanation. Triad citizens wandered aimlessly, their forms flickering between aspects so rapidly it was nauseating to watch. Some had locked into single personalities, frozen like statues, while others seemed to be losing cohesion entirely, their multiple souls fragmenting into discordant chaos. "This is what happens when the Trinity bond fails," Valora explained, her warrior's training allowing her to maintain focus despite the horror around them. "Without harmony between the 3 aspects, a triad consciousness tears itself apart." "But why is it happening to everyone?" Jackson asked, steadying Lyanna as she stumbled, her own aspects beginning to flicker more erratically. "Because we're all connected," Liana managed to say before Zephyra took control. Through Trionis itself. If the planetary consciousness is failing, it takes us all with it. They found the Convergence Council chambers at the heart of the city, though the great crystal dome that should have housed the governing body was cracked like a broken egg. Inside, they discovered Elder Threnon, the last surviving council member, his ancient form wavering between three distinct appearances so rapidly it was painful to observe. "Liana," he said, his voice a discordant harmony of three tones speaking at once. "You've returned at last and brought an outsider." "This is Jackson Reed," Liana said, managing to maintain her primary aspect long enough to speak clearly. "We're bonded. He might be able to help." Elder Threnon's eyes widened, the rapid shifting of his aspects slowing slightly. "A trinity bond with an alien consciousness? Impossible. The ritual has never been successfully performed with a non-triad." "What ritual?" Jackson demanded, though he was beginning to suspect he already knew. "The convergence," Zephyra said, taking control of Liana's voice. "It's what we mentioned on your ship, a joining of consciousnesses that creates something entirely new. But it's also our only hope," added Valora grimly. "The planetary mind is fragmenting because it can no longer maintain the harmony between all triad consciousness. We need a new kind of connection, something that can bridge the gaps that are tearing us apart." Elder Threnon gestured weakly toward a passage leading deeper into the chamber. "The convergence matrix still functions, though barely. But the process has never been attempted in circumstances like these. The risk—" "What risk?" Jackson asked, though the growing instability in his bond with Liana was already giving him clues. "Total consciousness dissolution," the elder said bluntly. "Your mind, her three aspects, possibly every triad soul on the planet, all fragmenting into component thoughts and memories. We'd cease to exist as individuals." Jackson felt the weight of an entire civilization's survival settling on his shoulders. Around them, the crystal walls pulsed with erratic, painful rhythms as Trionis itself fought to maintain coherence. "There has to be another way," he said. "There isn't," Liana replied, her voice now cycling rapidly between all three aspects. "I can feel it happening to me, too. The breakdown. We don't have much time." As if to emphasize her point, her form flickered violently, and for a terrifying moment Jackson saw three separate figures overlapping in the same space. Liana's gentle features, Valora's fierce expression, and Zephyra's ethereal beauty, all fighting for control of a single body. "The Matrix Chamber," Elder Threnon said urgently. "If you're going to attempt this, it must be now." They descended into the heart of the complex, where massive crystal formations created a chamber that hummed with barely contained power. At Intao, its center stood a platform surrounded by three crystalline pillars, each one resonating with a different harmonic frequency. "How does it work?" Jackson asked, studying the alien technology with professional interest. "The three pillars represent the aspects of triad consciousness," Zephyra explained, her mystical knowledge overriding the others for a moment. "Emotion, logic, and intuition. During convergence, they harmonize the frequencies of joining souls. And with a human consciousness added to the mix? We don't know," admitted Valora. "It could create a new form of harmony that stabilizes not just us, but the entire planetary mind. Or it could shatter every consciousness on Trionis into madness," Elder Threnon finished grimly. Jackson looked at Liana, whose form was now shifting between aspects every few seconds. Through their bond, he could feel her pain, her fear, and beneath it all, a desperate hope that he might be the key to saving her people. "What do you need me to do?" he asked. "Stand at the center," Liana said, managing to maintain coherence long enough to meet his eyes. "The pillars will scan your consciousness and attempt to map it to our Trinity structure. If it works, we'll join completely. Four minds becoming something entirely new." Jackson stepped onto the platform, feeling the crystal beneath his feet respond to his presence. The three pillars began to glow, and suddenly the chamber filled with harmonic frequencies that resonated in his bones. "Jackson," Liana called out, her voice barely audible over the growing crescendo. Whatever happens, know that loving you, all of us loving you, was worth the risk. The pillars erupted with light, and Jackson felt his consciousness seized by forces beyond his comprehension. His mind was pulled in 3 directions at once, stretched across dimensions of thought he'd never imagined existed. He found himself standing in a space that wasn't quite physical, facing 3 distinct figures who were all unmistakably Liana, yet completely unique. Liana herself stood before him, radiating warmth and compassion, her features soft and welcoming. To his left, Valora's warrior spirit blazed with controlled fury and protective instincts. On his right, Zephyra's mystical aspect seemed to shimmer between dimensions, her eyes holding knowledge of mysteries beyond mortal understanding. "We're dying," Liana said simply. "All of us. The connection that makes us whole is breaking down." "But you're here," Valora added, her voice carrying hope despite her fierce expression. "A consciousness unlike any we've encountered. You could be the bridge we need. Or the catalyst that destroys us all," Zephyra observed with mystical detachment. "The choice is yours, Jackson Reed. Join with us completely or watch us fade into discordant memories." Jackson looked at each of them. These 3 aspects of the woman he'd somehow come to love in the space of a few days. The bond between them, pulsed with shared emotions, memories, and hopes for a future that might never come. "What happens to me?" he asked. "To who I am." "You become more," all 3 said in unison. "We all do." In the physical world, Elder Threnon watched the human's body convulse as the convergence matrix pushed his alien consciousness beyond its limits. The pillars were resonating at frequencies that should have been impossible, creating harmonics that reached beyond the chamber to touch every crystal formation on Trionis. "It's working," he whispered in amazement. "The planetary mind is responding." In the space between thoughts, Jackson made his choice. He reached out to the 3 aspects of Liana, and they moved toward him with joy and gratitude blazing in their shared expression. When their hands touched, Jackson felt his consciousness explode outward, merging with theirs in a fusion of experiences, memories, and emotions that should have destroyed his sanity. Instead, something miraculous happened. The 4 distinct voices in his mind found harmony, creating a new form of consciousness that was simultaneously one and many. He was still Jackson Reed, but he was also Liana's compassion, Valora's strength, and Zephyra's wisdom. They were still themselves, but enhanced by his human perspective and determination. The change rippled outward from the matrix chamber, touching every triad consciousness on the planet. The chaotic fragmenting stopped as minds found new pathways to harmony, guided by the unprecedented fusion at Trionis' heart. When Jackson opened his eyes, all 4 sets of them somehow, he found himself standing in the chamber, but also floating in 3 other positions around the pillars. 4 bodies, 1 consciousness, perspectives that multiplied understanding instead of creating confusion. "By the 3 moons," Elder Threnon breathed. "You've done it. You've created something entirely new." Through their expanded awareness, they could feel Trionis healing, its crystal formations blazing back to life as the planetary consciousness found stability through their unique harmony. "We are Jackson," they said in 4 voices that blended into perfect harmony. "We are Liana, Valora, Zephyra. We are the bridge between worlds, the first of our kind." And as their 4 forms gradually solidified into a single transformed being that carried the best aspects of all 4 personalities, they knew that this was only the beginning of something unprecedented in the galaxy, a new form of consciousness that would forever change both human and triad understanding of what it meant to be truly alive. The bond that had begun with a simple touch during a pirate raid had become something cosmic, creating not just a marriage between species, but the birth of an entirely new form of existence.